The security guards barely looked at the tired man standing outside the sparkling glass building before shaking their heads with cold expressions. His faded shirt was wrinkled, his old shoes were covered in dust, and his little daughter clung tightly to his hand, trying to hide behind him. People walking past stared at them with silent judgment, while someone muttered that people like him had no place in such a luxurious company. Before he could explain why he had come, another harsh voice cut through the air, telling him that he simply did not belong there. What happened only a few minutes later left every person standing outside frozen in disbelief. The CEO of the company rushed out of the building, ignored everyone around him, and wrapped the poor single father in a heartfelt embrace that changed both of their lives forever. The morning sun shone brightly over the city as 34-year-old Elias Mercer slowly walked toward the tallest office tower downtown. Life had been unkind to him for years. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness, leaving him alone to raise their 6-year-old daughter, Nora. Since then, every sunrise had begun with worry and every sunset had ended with exhaustion. Elias worked every job he could find, from unloading delivery trucks before dawn to repairing broken furniture in the evenings. Even after working almost every hour of the day, there were nights when he skipped dinner so Nora could have enough food. Nora never complained. She understood more than most children her age. She smiled even when her shoes were worn out and hugged her father every night before sleeping on the tiny mattress they shared in their small apartment. She believed her father was the strongest person in the world, even though she often saw him quietly wiping tears from his face after she pretended to fall asleep. One rainy evening, while organizing an old box that had belonged to his late wife, Elias discovered a carefully folded envelope. Inside was a letter and an old business card. The letter explained that years earlier, his wife had once helped a frightened young businessman after a terrible car accident. She had stayed with him until help arrived and refused to accept any reward. Before leaving, the grateful stranger had handed her his card and promised that if her family ever needed help, they should visit him personally. The name on the card belonged to Adrian Holloway, now one of the country's most respected CEOs. For weeks Elias stared at that card but never gathered the courage to use it. Pride kept stopping him. He wanted to solve his own problems. But everything changed when he received an eviction notice. They had only 3 days before losing the only home Nora had ever known. With nowhere else to turn, Elias dressed in the cleanest clothes he owned and took Nora's hand before traveling across the city to Adrian Holloway's headquarters. As soon as they arrived, expensive cars lined the entrance while sharply dressed employees hurried through the revolving doors. Elias suddenly felt invisible. He knew he looked out of place, but he reminded himself he wasn't asking for charity. He simply wanted to deliver the letter. Instead, the guards refused to let him enter. Several employees walking past whispered to each other. Some smiled with pity while others openly laughed. One manager looked at Elias from head to toe and coldly insisted that the building was for appointments only and suggested that homeless shelters were several blocks away. Nora squeezed her father's hand tighter as tears quietly filled her eyes. Elias lowered his head. Humiliation weighed heavily on his shoulders. He almost turned away, believing he had made a terrible mistake. At that exact moment, a black car stopped near the entrance. Adrian Holloway had just returned from an important meeting. As he stepped out, he glanced toward the crowd gathering near the entrance. Something about the worn envelope in Elias's trembling hands caught his attention. Curious, Adrian walked closer. The moment he saw the handwriting on the envelope, his face completely changed. Without caring who was watching, Adrian hurried toward Elias. His eyes filled with emotion as memories from 20 years earlier flooded back. He remembered lying injured beside a damaged car while everyone else drove past. One woman had stayed with him for hours despite being late for work. She comforted him until emergency crews arrived and disappeared before he could properly thank her. That woman had been Nora's mother. Before anyone understood what was happening, Adrian embraced Elias with tears in his eyes. Silence covered the entire entrance. The same people who had looked down on the poor father moments earlier now stood speechless. Adrian apologized sincerely for how Elias had been treated and personally welcomed him inside the building. Employees lowered their eyes in shame while the security guard stepped aside without saying another word. Inside the executive office, Elias handed Adrian the letter. As Adrian finished reading it, he remained silent for several moments before gently folding the paper. He explained that he had searched for the woman who saved his life but had never found her. He had built his company believing success meant nothing if kindness was forgotten. Learning that she had passed away broke his heart. He listened carefully as Elias shared the struggles of raising Nora alone, working endless jobs, and fighting every day just to survive. Adrian didn't see a poor man sitting before him. He saw courage. He saw sacrifice. He saw the living example of unconditional love. That afternoon Adrian offered Elias something far greater than money. He offered him dignity. Instead of a temporary donation, Adrian created a full-time management trainee position tailored to Elias's practical skills and work ethic. The salary was enough to provide stability, health insurance, and a future for Nora. He also arranged flexible hours so Elias could continue caring for his daughter. News of what happened spread quietly through the company. Employees who had judged Elias earlier felt deeply ashamed. Many apologized personally. Several admitted they had forgotten that appearances reveal nothing about a person's character. Months passed. Elias worked harder than anyone expected. He arrived before sunrise every morning and often stayed late learning new skills. His honesty earned everyone's trust, and his kindness inspired coworkers throughout the office. Nora also flourished. She started attending a better school, made new friends, and smiled more often than she had in years. Every evening she waited by the apartment door to hug her father after work, proudly telling everyone that her dad never gave up. 1 year later, Adrian invited every employee to the company's annual celebration. Standing before hundreds of workers, he shared the story of the woman who had once saved a frightened young stranger without expecting anything in return. He explained that one act of compassion had changed his entire life and eventually built the values on which the company stood. Then he invited Elias and Nora onto the stage. The audience rose to their feet in a long-standing ovation. Many people wiped tears from their eyes as Adrian announced a new foundation in memory of Nora's mother, dedicated to helping struggling single parents rebuild their lives with dignity rather than pity. Elias looked around the room, remembering the painful morning when he had been told he didn't belong. Now he understood something far more powerful. Sometimes life closes doors not because you are unworthy, but because it is preparing one that will change your future forever. As the afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows, Nora wrapped her tiny arms around her father's waist, smiling with the kind of happiness only a child can express. Elias looked toward the sky, silently thanking the woman he had loved with all his heart. Though she was gone, her kindness had continued traveling through time, returning to protect the family she cherished most. Some people become rich through money. Others become unforgettable through kindness. And in the end, kindness always leaves the greatest inheritance of all.